Pentecost, as I said at the beginning, and as I've said a number of times, is one of my favorite Sundays of the year. One of 52, that's true. But there are some people who would consider themselves to be Christmas Christians, right? And they really love the birth story and the narrative of Jesus' birth. There are some Christians who would consider themselves to be Easter Christians. And we're all Easter Christians to a certain extent, but some really focus on that narrative, the narrative of Holy Week into the death and then ultimately the resurrection of Jesus. And we all celebrate that, but like I say, some really focus there. Others, and here's where I would put myself, I am a Pentecost Christian. Now, I'm not Pentecostal. That's sort of different, but anyway, I claim Pentecost as like that's my day. I love Pentecost. I love Pentecost because it's basically, in some ways, the birthday of the church. It's when the church is born. It's when those who have followed Jesus, they finally come out of their hiding places. They're in the public square, and now they own the story. They recognize it as their story to share. And so we hear it in the scripture today that. So now Peter and the other apostles are kind of gathered in the square, and they start speaking, and we know the story, right? Everybody hears it in their own languages, and Rick read off all the nations, and Victoria kind of gave us the 12 languages, the 12 like modern languages. But everybody hears the story in their own language, and they hear it, and it starts to captivate them. So I love Pentecost. I love Pentecost because it's the day when we, the church, are born into that story. Are born into that story. But it's more than that even. So up until then, I had this sense that up until then, so they knew the story. Right? They were informed, they had the information. Jesus had talked to them, Jesus had taught them this new understanding of God, this new gospel, this new good news, and the good news up until this point was really directed towards the people of Israel, God's chosen people. There are a couple of places in scripture in the Gospels where it goes a little bit further out, but really it's confined. And all the stories that are told like from while Jesus is alive and then into the early life, the stories are kind of taken from the Hebrew scriptures and given new life for those who are members of the covenant. But today, the message is heard in the languages not only of those in the covenant, but the languages of all people. Today it becomes everybody's story. And today it moves from being information to being transformation. Someone said to me not too long ago, that the church is really good at giving us information. Here's what you need to do. Here's the story. Here's what it calls us to do. And so we look at Micah and we go, so seek justice, love kindness, walk humbly with our God. We have the information, we know it. Some of us are really good at kind of reciting scripture, right? That is not one of my gifts, you know that. But today, it moves from being information to transformation. The early disciples, the apostles, they don't care that they look ridiculous. They're out there and they're preaching the word, and they're preaching it in such a way that that everybody who's there thinks they're drunk. They think these guys have been up partying all night. They just haven't stopped. They've carried it into the morning, and now they're here, but they're hearing the story and they're going, wait a minute. This story is starting to make sense. Like we're starting to understand it. And not only do we understand it, it's going to change us. It's going to change us. It's going to change who we are, and it's going to change how we live. Today is Pentecost Sunday, and it's not Pentecost Sunday 2,000 years ago. It's Pentecost Sunday today. 2023, today is Pentecost Sunday. Today is the day that the church owns the gospel. The church owns it is our story. Our story, not just to talk about, not just to go out and recite, but our story to live. And we actually sing that, right? I mean, the wonderful hymn that Tom wrote, based on the words that Linda created, or thought up during a brainstorming session. Linda said, our vision statement should be, love God, live Jesus. Love God, live Jesus. And we, as a congregation, own that. That is us. That is what we sing every Sunday. But it is more than what we sing. It's more than words that appear on the sign outside. It's more than words that appear on the sign at the Embrace Center. It's more than those words. It's more than our singing it. Those words are our commitment to Pentecost. Those words are our way of saying, when we go out those doors, when we leave each other's company, when we go out into the rest of our life, we take this congregation with us. And not only do we take this congregation with us, we take the gospel with us. We live Jesus. People have said to me, what does that mean? Like, what does, they've heard it sung, particularly people who come into the church for the first time, or someone who sees the words on the sign. I've had people stop me and say, you're one of the ministers up at St. John Stevensville, the red brick building, right? And I go, yep. I was looking at your sign, and I saw, love God, live Jesus. I understand love God, but what does it mean to live Jesus? What does it mean to live Jesus? And each one of us is invited to ask that question of ourselves. What does it mean not only to say, love God, live Jesus, but what does it mean to live Jesus? It means proclaiming this good news that is good news for everyone. And that's the other thing. So I do have to keep this morning's sermon a little shorter because we have communion. So I'm going to do that. But here's what I want to sort of suggest to you, though. That there are places in the world that are actually doing a better job than the church at some of that proclamation. A number of my recent mailings from the national church have been around investment policy and around anti-racism training and other pieces of work. We got a mailing from our bank not too long ago introducing prayer walks in the forest, something that Reverend Cheryl was already talking about, but it was weird that came from our bank. I just joined Planet Fitness. I told you when Batman's trying to slim down. Okay, so I joined Planet Fitness. And Planet Fitness, they have a mission statement when you walk in, and at the end of the mission statement, it says, so something to the effect of, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but it says, you belong, the world would not be the same without you. That's my gym. We say that. We say that all the time. I hope you hear that from Reverend Cheryl and from me and from others in the church, that you belong, that you are important, that the world would not be the same without you. It would not. we all have something to do, something to offer the world that the world would not have if you were not in it. Let's use this today, Pentecost, the birthday of the church, when we move from the multiple languages of Babel to the multiple languages of the kingdom, where the multiple languages don't divide us, but they unite us. We're united in our differences. But let's use this day to move out from this place as the people of God, the people who not only speak Pentecost, but live Pentecost. The people who not only speak Jesus, but live Jesus. Let us move from our spaces of information to spaces of transformation. Let's actually let people know that what we have to offer can not only save their lives, it can change their lives. It can change their lives. And how do we know that? We know that because it has changed ours. It has changed my life. I hope that it has changed your life. And that is something that is worth sharing, because there are untold numbers of people outside of these church doors who not only don't believe it, but have never been told it in a way that can be believed. Let's be that voice. And let's not worry about whether or not, when we're talking to somebody at 9 o'clock in the morning, they look at us and go, "Are you sure you're not drunk?" Because what we have to offer is just too magnificent, some might think, to be really grasped while sober. Thanks be to God.